Okay. I want you to close your eyes for a second. We're going back to a Saturday afternoon. Let's say it's, I don't know, 1998, maybe 1999.
Oh, no.
You've just parked your car in a massive, sprawling asphalt lot in some suburb, maybe outside Dallas or Atlanta or Chicago. You walk through a set of sliding glass doors, and you are hit with this very specific wall of air.
Oh, I know that air perfectly.
Yeah.
It's conditioned to be freezing cold, regardless of the weather outside. It's almost a statement.
It's freezing, yes. And it has a smell. Can you smell it? It's like ozone, static.
Ozone, static electricity, and fresh shrink wrap. It's the smell of new plastic off-gassing from thousands of products at once.
Yes, that shrink wrap smell. That's it, exactly. So you look to your left, and there is a pallet. I mean, a literal wooden shipping pallet stacked 6 feet high with boxes of copy paper.
Always the paper.
And to your right, there's a wall of beige towers, computer towers.
Yeah.
And monitors that weigh, I don't know, 50 pounds each. And the sound, it's this low-frequency hum of 100 cooling fans all spinning at once.
You are painting a very, very vivid picture of a very specific era in American retail. This is the absolute peak of the category killer era.
The big box store. And for a certain generation of nerds and geeks and, early adopters, this wasn't just a store. It was, look, I don't want to overstate it, but it was almost a pilgrimage site.
I don't think you are overstating it.
You didn't just go there to buy a cable. You went there to see what the future looked like.
It was a cathedral of commerce for the burgeoning digital age, and the temple you were describing is almost certainly CompUSA.
The king, the absolute heavyweight champion of the world. But here's the thing that triggered this whole deep dive for me. I was feeling nostalgic the other day, and I typed CompUSA.com into my browser just to see what was there.
Okay.
I expected maybe a redirect to a holding company or an investment firm or maybe a fan-run memorial page, something.
What did you find?
Nothing. A 404 error. Page not found. A digital ghost town. It didn't even redirect me to a history of page. It just didn't exist anymore. It's gone.
Wow. That is such a stark contrast to where they were. At their peak, we are talking about a genuine empire, over 229 locations, billions with a B in revenue. They were the gateway to the internet for millions of Americans.
So that's the mystery we're trying to solve today. How do you go from being the absolute center of the tech universe, the place where America literally learned how to use a computer, to an error message?
Well, it's a classic corporate tragedy. I mean, it has everything. Hubris, some really questionable management, the internet revolution, and some truly, truly bizarre business pivots.
It sounds like it's a story about what happens when a company forgets what it is.
That's a perfect way to put it. And we have a massive stack of sources today. We're looking at corporate timelines, financial reports from the 90s, liquidation documents, and even some old marketing archives we dug up.
So what are the main threads we need to pull on?
I think there are three. First, the whole category killer concept itself, what it was, why it works so well, and then why it just stopped working. Second, the danger of what I'd call stagnant corporate oversight. Specifically, what happens when the people running the ships stop looking at the horizon and just look at the spreadsheets.
And the third?
The third is what I call zombie retail. It's the messy, complex afterlife of a corporate brand. Just because a company dies doesn't mean it stays dead. Not really.
Zombie retail. I love that. Okay, but before we get to the zombies, we have to start with the birth of the beast. We have to go back to 1984.
1984, the year the Macintosh launched.
Yes.
The year of the famous Super Bowl ad.
Exactly. The PC revolution is just kicking into gear. And in Addison, Texas, which is a suburb of Dallas, two guys named Errol Jacobson and Mike Henitrovich decide to open a store. Now, they didn't call it CompUSA initially.
No. They gave it a name that I think just perfectly encapsulates the era. It's so blunt. They called it Soft Warehouse.
Soft Warehouse. It doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, does it? It sounds like a place where you'd buy pillows or, I don't know, mattresses.
Right. It does sound a bit plush. But you have to understand the psychology of the computer market in 1984. There's a reason they chose that specific name.
I'm assuming warehouse just implies cheap, right?
Precisely. Computers in the early 80s were terrifyingly expensive. I mean, truly. If you went to a boot computer dealer, like a Computerland or something, you were paying thousands and thousands of dollars.
And you felt like you were paying for the experience. The carpet, the salesman's fancy suit, all the overhead. It was an intimidating, high-friction purchase.
Totally. So by calling it a warehouse, they were sending a signal, a very clear one.
They were saying, no frills here, rock-bottom prices, we stack them deep and sell them cheap. It was a complete rejection of that IBM man in the crisp blue suit. This was for the people, for the hobbyists.
Exactly. And the soft part.
Short for software, which is a really crucial distinction.
Right, because in 1984, hardware was the main event. But Jacobson and Hanachovich, they realized that once you bought the box, you needed the programs to run on it. And software had incredibly high margins. They focused on volume.
So it's a very industrial, very utilitarian vibe from the get-go.
And that vibe just seemed to work. In 1986, just 2 years later, they opened their first superstore on Marsh Lane and Beltline Road in Addison.
And when we say superstore in 1986, what are we really talking about? What's the scale?
We're talking about a massive footprint. Most computer stores at the time were these tiny little storefronts in strip malls, maybe 1,000 square feet. This was different. They were taking the model of a grocery store or a big lumber yard and applying it to floppy disks and dot matrix printers.
And it caught on in a big way. By 1988, they're going national. They open a mega store in Atlanta, Georgia. The expansion it's aggressive.
It is the beginning of the explosion.
Yeah.
But the real shift, the moment they decided to stop being a local warehouse and start being a national brand, that happens in 1991.
That's the rebrand. They finally drop soft warehouse.
Probably a wise move in the long run.
And they become CompUSA.
And at the same time, they go public on the New York Stock Exchange. This is a massive pivot.
The name change alone is so significant, isn't it? CompUSA sounds definitive. It sounds patriotic almost.
It does. It signals that they want to be the American computer retailer.
Yeah.
It's ambitious. They're consciously shedding that local industrial skin and putting on a proper corporate suit.
And the man wearing that suit, metaphorically speaking, was the CEO at the time, Nathan P. Morton.
Right. The Morton era is really considered the golden age by almost any metric. Under his leadership, revenues just skyrocketed. They hit over $2 billion.
That's billion with a B.
For the early 90s, in this very specialized retail sector, that is just astronomical growth. It's hard to overstate how dominant they were becoming.
It wasn't just about the money, though. It was about how they talked to people. I was looking through the notes on their marketing from this era, and do you remember the character PC Modem?
Oh, absolutely. The radio campaigns, yes.
1990, they hire actor Jack Riley to play this character, PC Modem, and it ran for years. Why do that? Why use a character?
Well, it's a classic marketing strategy for what you'd call a high-anxiety product.
Mm-hmm.
You have these complex, intimidating machines, personal computers.
Right.
People are genuinely scared they're going to break them, or they don't understand the jargon. What is a bit? What is a byte? What's RAM? So what do? You humanize it. You create a character to make the technology feel approachable, maybe even a little funny. It lowers the barrier to entry.
It's kind of like the Mac versus PC ads that came much, much later, but for the retail experience itself, it's saying, it's okay if you don't know what you're doing, we're here to help you.
Exactly. And it worked. They were democratizing the technology, making it feel like it was for everyone, not just for engineers.
So Morton resigns in 1993, but the train is already moving at an incredible speed. We get to the mid-90s, the internet is starting to bubble up into the mainstream consciousness, and this brings us to a really interesting contradiction in the source material about their online presence.
Ah, yes. This is a classic example of the innovator's dilemma.
Okay, let's unpack that, because when I look at the timeline, it says CompUSA launched retail sales on CompUSA.com way back in 1996.
1996? I mean, that is incredibly early. Amazon was barely selling books at that point. Most major retailers didn't even have a static web page, let alone a fully functional e-commerce site where you could put in a credit card number.
So on paper, they were pioneers, they were ahead of the curve.
Technically, yes, they were present. But here's the key. Being present and being effective are two very, very different things. And the sources later cite a failure to transition to online sales as one of the primary reasons for their collapse.
Okay, so how is that possible if they were there in 96? If they were one of the first, shouldn't they have won that race?
Not necessarily. You have to think about their core business model. They had these massive, expensive physical stores, those 229 locations we mentioned. They were paying enormous amounts in rent, electricity, and salaries for thousands and thousands of employees.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're the CEO and you push too hard online, if you make your website too good and too cheap, you cannibalize your own stores.
You undercut your own store managers, who are probably a powerful force within the company.
Exactly. Every single dollar spent on the website was a dollar not spent in the physical store. And the store managers, the regional managers, they would have absolutely viewed the website as a direct competitor.
So they put up a website, but they didn't really want it to succeed too much.
I think that's right. While they had the website, the corporate focus, the bonuses, the entire culture was likely still 90% focused on getting bodies into the physical big box. They treated the web as a side project, a curiosity, rather than the future of their entire industry.
They saw it as a supplement, not a replacement. Like, hey, check the prices here, then come on in and buy it from us.
Right. Whereas a company like Amazon, they didn't have any stores to protect. They could burn the boats. CompUSA was desperately trying to protect the castle from the very revolution they were helping to arm.
So while they were sort of struggling to figure out the web, they were making some massive moves in the physical world. I want to fast forward to 1997, because looking at the timeline, this feels like a moment where CompUSA actually made a truly brilliant move, even if it didn't save them in the end.
You're talking about the Apple deal.
The Apple deal. But we need to set the stage. The Apple of 1997 is not the Apple of 2024.
Oh, goodness, no. Not even close. Yeah. 1997, Apple was on death's door. Their stock was in the toilet. They were losing money hand over fist. Michael Dell had famously said that if he were running Apple, he'd shut it down and give the money back to the shareholders.
So if you're a retailer at that time, stocking Macintoshes is a huge risk. They weren't selling, they were just collecting dust on the shelves.
And most retailers were kicking them out. Circuit City, Best Buy, they were shrinking their Apple sections down to nothing or hiding them in a back corner. They wanted that precious shelf space for the Windows 95 machines, which were absolutely flying out the door.
So into this chaos enters CompUSA.
Well, Steve Jobs had just come back to Apple. He's trying to save the company, and he realizes he has a fundamental problem. He could build the greatest computer in the world, and the iMac was just around the corner. But if the 19-year-old kid at the electronics store doesn't know how to sell it, or worse, is actively incentivized to push a Compaq or a Gateway instead, Apple was dead.
So he needed a sanctuary for his products.
He needed a controlled environment. And he went to CompUSA, and he proposed this radical idea: the store within a store.
What did that actually look like on the ground?
It was amazing for the time. In the middle of this chaotic, noisy, beige warehouse we described earlier, they literally carved out a dedicated zone for Apple. It had different flooring, usually black carpet. It had different, more focused lighting. It was cleaner. It was quieter.
It was like walking from one country into another right there in the middle of the store.
And this is the crucial part. CompUSA let Apple train the staff in that section. This was the absolute precursor to the Genius Bar. You had a CompUSA employee wearing a CompUSA shirt, but they had been to what they called Apple Camp. They knew the product inside and out. They could actually explain why a Mac was better for graphic design or video editing.
That seems incredibly forward-thinking for a store that was basically built on the Stack 'em High warehouse model. By January 1998, they had built 57 of these things.
If you were a Mac user in the late 90s, CompUSA wasn't just a store. It was the only place you could reliably go to see and touch the new hardware. It was a critical lifeline for Apple during its darkest days.
Okay, so this is the part I don't get. If they were bedfellows with the company that would become the most valuable company on Earth, how did they lose? How did that not save them?
Well, being the landlord to a genius doesn't make you a genius yourself. It just means you collect the rent for a while.
Yeah.
Eventually, Apple realized, hey, this dedicated retail concept works so well, why don't we just build our own stores and keep all the profit?
So CompUSA was basically the training wheels for the Apple Store.
That's the perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And once Apple learned how to ride the bike, they didn't need the warehouse anymore. But at the time, it really showed that CompUSA was willing to experiment and try new things.
And speaking of trying things, they didn't just partner with Apple, they started buying up their competitors. In 1998, they acquired Tandy's Computer City.
Which is a pretty interesting detail because Nathan Morton, the former CompUSA CEO, actually helped facilitate that deal from the other side. It was a consolidation move. The market was getting crowded. You had Best Buy, Circuit City, Fry's Electronics, Micro Center.
Right.
CompUSA's strategy was pretty simple. Just eat the smaller fish, get bigger.
They also tried to diversify into services. They started CompUSA call center services in 1998.
Right. The idea was to provide help desks and technical support for other companies like cellular providers or OEMs. It's a really smart idea on paper.
You got all this technical expertise in-house. Why not sell it as a B2B service?
Exactly. And that division actually did okay. It was eventually spun off as a separate company called the Telvista Company in 2001. But it shows they were thinking, at least a little bit, about being more than just a box mover.
So we're at the end of the 90s. CompUSA is the undisputed king. They've eaten Computer City. They're hosting Apple's comeback. They have a growing call center business. Life looks pretty good. But then the year 2000 hits, and the entire structure of the company changes fundamentally.
This is a really pivotal moment in the story. The company goes private.
They get thought out.
They get bought out by Grupo Sanborns, which is a massive Mexican retail company. They purchased 85% of CompUSA. Now, for those who don't follow international finance, Grupo Sanborns is associated with an even bigger entity, Grupo Carso, which is controlled by Carlos Slim.
One of the wealthiest men in the world.
Correct. So in one move, CompUSA goes from being a public U.S. company, answerable to shareholders on Wall Street, to being a subsidiary of a massive international conglomerate.
How does that kind of change affect a company's day-to-day? Does it make them safer because they have deeper pockets backing them?
You might think so, and in some ways it does. But it can really change the agility of a company. When you're a small division within a foreign conglomerate, the chain of command gets a lot longer.
Right.
Decisions that used to be made in Dallas might now have to go through Mexico City. And those decisions might be made by people who aren't walking the floors of the store in Ohio or California. It can lead to a real disconnect between the ownership and the reality on the ground.
And we start to see some of that potential disconnect with the next big acquisition. Let's move into what I'd call the era of the identity crisis. We're in 2003. CompUSA buys a company called Good Guys.
This is a classic textbook case study in strategic adjacency gone horribly, horribly wrong.
Strategic adjacency. That sounds like MBA speak for, we thought these two things went together, but they really didn't.
Laughs. That's pretty much exactly what it is. Good Guys was a high-end consumer electronics retailer, mostly West Coast based. You're talking about, $5,000 speakers, mahogany finish amplifiers, home theater setups that cost as much as a new car.
Okay. And CompUSA, at its core, sells hard drives, printer ink, and discount laptops stacked on pallets.
Exactly. So the strategy was, hey, Best Buy is doing this with their Magnolia brand. They're putting these fancy home theater sections in their stores. We need to do that too to compete.
It's a Me Too strategy. They're copying their competitor.
Yes. But just think about the culture clash for a second. Who is the typical CompUSA shopper in 2003?
It's a guy looking for a new graphics card. He wants specs. He wants to know the clock speed, the amount of VRAM. He's reading the back of the box. He's probably wearing a T-shirt with some kind of nerdy reference on it.
Correct. He's a utilitarian buyer. He's on a mission. Now, who is the good guy shopper?
That's someone who wants to sit in a plush leather chair in a soundproofed room, close their eyes, and listen to a jazz record on a high-fidelity system. They want an experience. It's a luxury purchase.
Exactly. It is an emotional sale versus a technical specs-based sale. The two mindsets could not be more different.
And CompUSA tried to jam these two worlds together.
Oh, it was worse than that. They closed all 46 of the standalone Good Guys locations, destroying that brand's entire identity, and moved all that high-end inventory inside the CompUSA warehouses. They even rebranded the stores CompUSA with Good Guys inside.
That is a mouthful of a name. It doesn't exactly flow.
It's just clunky branding, but physically it was a disaster. Imagine you had these $10,000 speakers sitting right next to a literal pallet of discount DVDs in a bargain bin, and you have the staff who are trained to explain the difference between DDR2 and DDR3 RAM suddenly being asked to sell the concepts of audio warmth and soundstage.
So the customers didn't cross-pollinate, I'm guessing?
Not at all. The computer guys didn't care about the expensive speakers, and the audiophiles certainly did not want to buy their luxury audio gear in a place that smelled like shrink wrap and ozone. It just diluted the CompUSA brand and alienated the old Good Guys customers. It confused everyone.
So the cracks are really starting to show. The Good Guys integration is rocky at best. And then we get to 2005 and 2006, and we start to see signs of real internal distress. Let's talk about the loyalty program.
Yes, the CompUSA network.
Launched in 2005, the deal was 13 points for every dollar spent. That sounds pretty generous, actually.
That is a very, very aggressive reward rate.
Yeah.
It suggests they were pretty desperate to get people to sign up and swipe their cards.
But then, in 2006, just a year later, they completely suspend sales of the membership cards. The official reason from the source material says they needed to investigate program awareness among low-visit customers and the effect on retention.
Which is just the most beautiful piece of corporate speak for, we are losing a ton of money on this, and we have no idea if it's actually working.
And then they ended it. They killed the whole program.
Rotated completely.
Yeah.
Customers got some coupons or refunds for their membership fee. But think about what that signals to the market, to your customers. A loyalty program is supposed to be the anchor of your retail strategy. It's the thing that keeps people coming back.
Right.
If you launch a big, flashy loyalty program and then you abruptly cancel it a year later, It suggests total internal chaos.
Yeah.
It suggests you don't have a long-term plan. You are just throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks.
And while this loyalty program is collapsing, the leadership at the top is just churning.
This is a critical detail. In 2006, the CEO, a guy named Tony Weiss, leaves after only 4 months on the job.
4 months. That's barely enough time to find the bathroom, let alone formulate and execute a corporate strategy.
Exactly. And who do they bring in to replace him? A man named Roman Ross.
Okay.
And here is where the story gets really, really interesting. Roman Ross was a former executive at Philip Morris,
The tobacco company.
the tobacco company.
Yeah.
Now, look, I want to be fair. Management skills can be transferable. If you can run a global supply chain for cigarettes, you understand logistics. But there is a very valid critique to be made here about corporate oversight being completely out of touch with the market realities.
You're bringing in a tobacco executive to run a computer hardware retailer in the middle of the most disruptive digital revolution in human history.
It really highlights the commoditization mindset of the ownership. If you sell cigarettes, the product is the product. It doesn't change much year to year. It's about marketing and distribution. But technology changes every 6 months. You need to understand the community. You need to understand why someone is passionate about buying a specific GPU.
And under Ross, in November 2006, what's the big strategic push? They
Right.
pushed this big home entertainment rollout. They put HD TVs and home theater equipment in 40 stores.
Again, just look at the timing. November 2006, the iPod is completely dominant. The iPhone is just a few months away from being announced. It launched in early 2007. The entire world is moving toward mobile computing, toward digital services, toward lightweight laptops. And CompUSA's big pivot is to big, heavy televisions.
Which is exactly what Best Buy and Walmart and Costco and their other big rival, Circuit City, were already doing.
Exactly. They were late to enter an already saturated market where they had absolutely no competitive advantage. They were fighting a war on a front where they were already outnumbered and outgunned. And meanwhile, their core identity computers and components was rapidly shifting online to places like Newegg and Amazon.
It was a pivot to the past, not a pivot to the future.
It really was.
Yeah.
And the market responded, or rather, it just stopped responding. And we finally reached 2007, and the dam just breaks.
The collapse. The software house finally runs out of runway.
It starts in February 2007. The company announces they are closing 126 stores. That was more than half of their remaining locations at the time. A brutal cut.
And look at who they hired to help them do this. They didn't hire a growth consultant. They didn't hire a famous turnaround specialist. They retained Gordon Brothers.
Who are Gordon Brothers?
They are asset recovery specialists. Liquidators. When you call Gordon Brothers, you are not trying to save the business. You are trying to sell the furniture, the fixtures, the inventory, everything for pennies on the dollar.
They are the vultures you call when the animal is already down on the side of the road.
That is such a grim realization for the thousands of employees. The moment that name gets mentioned, you know it's over.
The criteria for closing the stores were just brutal and clinical. Performance, profitability, and most importantly, proximity to competitors. They specifically listed Best Buy, Fry's, Micro Center, and Circuit City. Basically, if a CompUSA was near a competitor that was doing it better, they shut it down.
And the sales, I remember these vividly, the giant yellow and red going out of business signs. People would just flock to the stores thinking they were getting the deal of a lifetime.
But were they really?
I have a suspicion you're going to tell me, no, not really.
Well, the source material notes that the initial discounts were somewhere in the range of 5 to 30% off. But here's the trick that liquidators often use. The first thing they do is go through the store and remove all the existing sale tax. They reset everything to the full MSRP, the manufacturer's suggested retail price.
Which in the real world of electronics retail, nobody ever actually pays.
Right. So they jack the price up to the absolute maximum theoretical price, and then they take 10% or 20% off. For the first few weeks of a liquidation sale, you are often paying more than you would have paid on a normal Tuesday a month earlier.
That is just devious.
It's capitalizing on the panic that everything must go. Signage, it triggers a scarcity instinct in people. You saw people buying obviously broken open box cables and outdated software just because of that big yellow banner out front.
And by the very end?
By May of 2007, it was 95% off. By then, you were literally buying the shelving units. You're buying the employee lockers from the break room. It's just the carcass of the business being picked clean.
So by May 2007, that first big wave of closures is done. But the corporate body is still twitching a little bit. In December of 2007, the company itself is sold.
It's sold to a company called Specialty Equity, which is an affiliate of Gordon Brothers.
Wait, hold on. So the liquidators bought the company they were hired to liquidate?
Essentially, yes. The company was bought by the very people who were hired to take it apart. It's the final stage of corporate hospice. They kept about 103 stores open for a little while longer, mostly to sell through the remaining inventory, but the writing was on the wall in giant, flaming letters.
So that's it. That's the death of the original CompUSA. The soft warehouse that was founded back in 1984 is officially gone. But the name, the brand itself, that didn't die.
And this is where we enter the zombie phase. Because brands have value, even damaged ones, people recognize the name CompUSA. So in January 2008, another company, Systemax, steps in.
Systemax, they were the parent company of TigerDirect, right?
Correct. And TigerDirect was a huge catalog and online retailer for computer parts and electronics. They were very aggressive, very nerd-centric. They bought the CompUSA brand, the trademarks, and 16 of the remaining retail locations, mostly in Florida, Texas, and Puerto Rico.
So the strategy was to use the CompUSA skin to fuel TigerDirect's move into a physical retail presence.
Exactly. It's cheaper than building a brand from scratch. They slapped the CompUSA name on their existing TigerDirect stores. They tried to wear the skin of the fallen giant to give themselves instant recognition.
And to their credit, they tried to innovate, too. In October 2008, they launched something they called Retail 2.0.
Oh, the irony of this is just, it's painful. Retail 2.0 was a strategy to deeply integrate internet shopping into the physical stores. You could walk in, use these computer terminals to see the full online inventory. You could scan a product on the shelf and see online reviews right there.
That sounds exactly like what CompUSA should have done in 1999 or 2000.
It was the perfect idea, executed nearly a decade too late. If the original CompUSA had done this when they were the undisputed market leader, they might have become Amazon before Amazon did. But doing it in 2008, under a zombie brand, in the middle of a global financial crisis, it was completely doomed from the start.
And the zombie eventually ran out of steam, too. In November 2012, Systemax announced they were dropping the names.
They dropped both CompUSA and Circuit City because, yeah, they had bought the Circuit City brand, too. They were like a collector of fallen retail giants. They decided to consolidate everything under their core brand, TigerDirect.
Customers got an email on November 7, 2012, and just like that, the CompUSA name was stripped from the last few storefronts.
But even that wasn't the final end.
No, because intellectual property is like a hot potato. It just keeps getting passed around from one holding company to another.
In December 2013, the IP was sold to a realty group, of all things, called Jasily 645 Realty. Then, in 2018, it was leased to a company called Deal Central.
And I remember this vaguely. There's a press release and some minor news stories in 2018 about a grand relaunch of CompUSA.com.
There was. A splash page went up. There was a press release full of buzzwords, a promise that the king would return to reclaim his throne.
And what is the reality today, as we're talking?
The reality is an error page. As of right now, the domain redirects to absolutely nothing. It is the digital equivalent of an empty, weed-choked lot where a grand castle used to stand. The soft warehouse is finally, definitively, and completely closed for business.
What a wild ride. From a single warehouse in Addison, Texas, to a multi-billion-dollar empire, to a zombie brand, to a 404 error.
It really is an incredible story.
So let's try to wrap this up. What are the big takeaways here? If you're looking at this as a business case study, what did we learn from the fall of CompUSA?
I think the first and most important lesson is about the life cycle of the category killer. That model building a massive store with absolutely everything in it. It worked beautifully in the 80s and 90s for one simple reason. Information was scarce.
What do you mean by information being scarce?
I mean that in 1992, if you wanted to know which printer was the best one to buy, you had to go to the store and ask the guy in the red shirt. Or maybe if you were dedicated, you'd read a print magazine. But for the most part, the retailer held all the knowledge.
Right. They were the gatekeepers of the information.
But the internet completely destroyed that monopoly on information. Suddenly, I could go online and read 100 reviews on CNET. I could go to a forum and ask other users. I didn't need the guy in the red shirt to explain the specs to me anymore. In fact, pretty soon, I often knew more than he did.
The value add, their main reason for existing, it just evaporated.
It evaporated almost overnight. And the second big takeaway is about adaptability. CompUSA was crushed by competitors like Best Buy, who adapted faster to the home entertainment trend, and obviously by the very technology they sold the internet. But I don't think its failure was inevitable.
You don't think so? A lot of people say that big brick-and-mortar computer stores were just doomed no matter what they did.
No, I don't think so. And the proof is Micro Center?
Oh, that's a fantastic point. Micro Center's still around. I was just in one last week.
Micro Center is not just around. In many ways, it's thriving. And why? Because they are arguably more nerdy than CompUSA ever was, even in its heyday. They leaned into the hobbyist market, the PC builder market.
They have that massive build-your-own PC section in the back of the store. They have 3D printers and Raspberry Pi kits.
Correct. They didn't try to become a TV store or an appliance store. They doubled down on their core niche. CompUSA, with the Good Guys acquisition and the home entertainment push, they try to be everything to everyone. And in doing so, they lost their core identity. Micro Center kept theirs, and that's why they survived.
And we can't forget the leadership aspect in all this.
The tobacco executive factor. It really highlights the critical importance of having leadership that understands and is passionate about the product, not just the spreadsheet. When you start treating computers like they're cigarettes or bars of soap, you miss all the nuances of the community. Tech consumers are smart. They know when they're being pandered to.
The Good Guys pivot and that abrupt cancellation of the loyalty program, it just showed a management team that was completely flailing and out of touch.
It's a difference between a founder-led vision and a conglomerate-managed portfolio asset. It's a different mindset.
So here's the provocative thought I want to leave everyone with today. We look back at CompUSA with this mixture of nostalgia and maybe a little bit of pity, but we are living in a time right now where retail is shifting again just as dramatically as it did in the late 90s.
Absolutely. We are seeing the exact same patterns play out.
We see other big retail giants struggling. We see the rise of AI in shopping and instant delivery services. So looking at the current landscape, the Best Buys, the GameStops, even the Targets of the world, who is the next CompUSA?
That is the multi-billion-dollar question, isn't it? Who right now is pivoting to home entertainment when they should be looking at whatever retail 3.0 is going to be? Who is about to cancel their loyalty program because they don't really know if it's working?
It's a very scary question if you're a shareholder in one of those companies.
History doesn't repeat itself, but it certainly rhymes. And somewhere, right now, there is a new software house starting up. Maybe it's a website, maybe it's an app, maybe it's just a guy in a garage selling specialized AI servers. And they are going to eat everyone's lunch in the next 10 years.
And we will be here to do a deep dive on them when they do.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to this deep dive into the rise, fall, and strange afterlife of CompUSA. If you have any fond memories of buying a 50-pound CRT monitor, or if you still have your old CompUSA rewards card in a junk drawer somewhere, take a moment to appreciate just how fast the world moves.
And remember, adaptability is survival.
We'll see you on the next dive.